This updated version of Audi's second generation Q5 gets a smarter look, an extra sleeker sportback body shape, an upgraded cabin, and more efficient diesel power to join the existing petrol and petrol plug-in options. There's a big step forward in media connectivity too. As ever, this mid-sized premium Audi executive SUV offers car-like driving dynamics that are great on tarmac and fine for very light off-road use. Plus, there's loads of advanced technology and a beautifully practical interior crafted in Audi's own inimitable style. In short, if you can afford it, you'd like one. Three models dominate the executive mid to large section of the premium badged SUV sector, and this is one of them, Audi's Q5. It's long faced stiff competition from its two arch rivals, the BMW X3 and the Mercedes GLC, but it looks stronger against them thanks to the package of mid-term updates visited on the revised Q5 model that we're going to look at in this film. Quite a lot's different here, even though that might not be immediately apparent at first glance. There's an all-new twin-dosing 2-litre TDI diesel engine, fresh mild hybrid tech across the range, a completely redesigned advanced cabin infotainment system, and for those who want it, Audi's TFSIe plug-in hybrid technology is now really getting into gear. Top variants also gain an achingly trendy OLED rear lighting system, and there's an all-new coupe-like sportback body style alternative to this standard SUV model. Some things haven't changed though. As before, this is the kind of upper mid-sized premium badged SUV that you buy if you want something that'll look great in the driveway, which will keep you mobile in a snowy snap and will shrink around you when a twisting road opens up ahead. It's a demanding brief, which earlier versions of this model line proved adept at delivering on, beginning with the first generation Type 8R design, which was launched back in 2008. That found more than 1.6 million global customers over an 8-year production run. An entirely new factory in San Jose, Chiapa, Mexico, that was constructed to make this second generation Type 80A model, launched in 2017. And Audi's reward was over 750,000 further global sales by the time this design was facelifted in mid-2020 to create the car that we're going to look at here. The competition, though, is ramping up. An all-new BMW X3 has been launched since this Mark II Q5 was originally introduced, and there have been significant recent changes to other key rivals like the Mercedes GLC, the Jaguar F-Pace and the Volvo XC60. Is this latest Q5 still good enough to continue to ask questions that rivals like those may struggle to answer? That's what we're going to find out. Customers of premium upper mid-sized SUVs don't typically tend to prioritise an involving driving experience, and if they do, they don't tend to choose this one. Yet if for you driving enjoyment lies with a lowering rather than a raising of the heartbeat, you might really appreciate what Audi has tried to do with the Q5. The ride on the standard dynamic suspension that you get on this basic sports spec model is a little smoother than we remember it back at the second generation model's original introduction in 2017, which means that it's now difficult to better in this class. Inevitably, it is a little firmer with the sport suspension setup that features with mid-range S-Line trim, and which has to be had with all mainstream versions of the coupe-like Q5 sportback body style, which Audi offers as an alternative to the standard SUV model, which is our focus today. What doesn't vary across the range is the impressive refinement on offer, aided by exemplary build quality and the super stiff MLB Evo chassis. Add in seamless shifts from the S-Tronic Auto gearbox and the potential to add the choicest elements of Audi's latest autonomous drive tech, and there's a lot to compensate for the fact that this car remains ultimately pretty disinterested in offering much driver feedback when the road gets twisty, which in some ways is curious given that this Audi shares many of its mechanicals with a Porsche Macan. Add in the steering rack from that car to replace the rather lifeless one that a Q5 has to have, and this Ingolstadt model would be, well, it would be transformed. Actually, this Audi doesn't share quite as many mechanicals with a Macan in this revised form, which is because with this midterm facelift, the brand has taken the opportunity to add electrification in various doses to all the available engines, one of which is completely new, the 204 PS 2-litre TDI diesel unit we're trying here. Now, these days, you might be surprised to hear that Audi offers a diesel engine at all in this car, let alone a completely new one. The Volkswagen Group, though, thinks that TDI technology has a lot more life in it yet, and accordingly has developed the twin-dosing 4-cylinder unit on offer in this Volume 40 TDI model, which delivers 14 PS more than the 2-litre TDI unit it replaces, and features a 12-volt mild hybrid system to improve cleanliness and frugality. As we'll explain in more detail later in this film, the MHEV efficiency benefits aren't particularly noticeable, and nor is the impact on performance, although the setup's belt-driven BSG starter generator delivers a small hit of power and torque to aid acceleration, which reduces the 0 to 62 miles an hour time by around half a second to 7.6 seconds en route to 137 miles an hour. The mild hybrid system's other attributes are of arguably more benefit. Its starter generator charges a little lithium-ion battery when slowing down, which produces energy able to power ancillaries like the climate control and the electric power steering. Plus, with the efficiency Audi Drive Select driving mode selected, the other settings are comfort, dynamic, off-road, auto and individual, the engine will seamlessly cut out and coast at speeds of up to 99 miles an hour. Plus, the MHEV tech allows the stop and start system to cut in much earlier, from 13 miles an hour, so the car eases silently up to junctions and traffic lights and then restarts its engine more seamlessly when the time comes to move away. The same 12-volt MHEV tech also features in the alternative mainstream conventional 4-cylinder model, the petrol-powered 45 TFSI, which uses the same 7-speed S-tronic paddle-shift gearbox and puts out 265 PS from its 2-litre TFSI power plant. It doesn't have quite as much pulling power as this 40 TDI, 370 Newton meters compared to 400, but it offers the same 2.4-ton brake towing capacity and quite a lot more performance. The stats improve to 6.1 seconds and 149 miles an hour. The same 2-litre TFSI petrol engine and S-tronic transmission also provide the basis for the two TFSIe plug-in hybrid Q5 models that your Audi Centre will want you to consider. There are two, the 50 TFSIe with 299 PS and the 55 TFSIe with 367 PS. Both pair the 1984cc petrol power plant with a 105 kilowatt electric motor powered by a 14.1 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery, which, when it's fully replenished, can deliver up to 26 miles of all-electric driving range. That's provided you make proactive use of the specific electrified drive modes made available for TFSIe models. Hybrid is the default one, but you've also got EV for battery power only and battery hold, which enables you to save battery power for later in the trip. For those occasions when frugality is abandoned, though, and you simply need performance, the 50 TFSIe makes 62 miles an hour in 6.1 seconds, a figure the more potent 55 TFSIe improves to 5.3 seconds. Both derivatives top out at 148 mph. What about four-wheel drive across the Q5 range? Well, it's standard, of course. All-wheel traction tends to be merely a nice-to-have feature amongst smaller mid-sized SUVs, but in the premium upper mid-sized sector that the Q5 sits in, it's these days an expected feature, delivered in the case of all the TDI, TFSI and TFSIe Q5 variants mentioned so far by the latest version of the Quattro Ultra four-wheel drive setup of this Type 80A second generation Q5 used in its pre-facelifted form. Like most other all-wheel drive systems used in this class, this one operates in a seamless fashion, introducing drive to the rear wheels when grip levels demand it, or when you switch into the dynamic driving mode. The difference with Ultra Quattro technology, though, is that it can also be predictive. sensors around the car allow the system to read your driving style. So for example, if you're throwing this Audi around in that sporty drive select dynamic setting, the software will engage four-wheel drive sooner and for longer. In contrast, if you're cruising along with drive select in comfort, the Quattro package is less likely to unnecessarily come into play than it would be in a less intelligent on-demand system. That covers the four-cylinder Q5 range, which might in future be embellished by an entry-level 35 TDI diesel variant using a lower-powered version of the 2-litre engine that we're trying here. Audi hadn't confirmed that derivative at the time of this test in early 2021, nor had the brand decided whether to import the mainstream 3-litre V6 TDI diesel variant, the 286 PS 50 TDI model. Where you can definitely have that 6-cylinder diesel, which now gets a 48-volt version of the mild hybrid system we mentioned earlier, is in the sporting SQ5, which uses it in an uprated 341 PS state of tune and is fitted out with an electric compressor, which facilitates near instantaneous throttle response and virtually seamless access to 700 Newton meters of torque. All Audi's V6 TDI engines use an 8-speed Tiptronic ZF torque converter auto gearbox instead of the usual 7-speed S-Tronic dual clutch auto. And in the case of the SQ5 TDI, if you're quick with the steering wheel paddle shifters, you'll be able to work with it to dispatch the rest of the 62 miles an hour sprint in just 5.1 seconds en route to a top speed that has to be artificially limited at 155 miles an hour. Power, of course, is nothing without control, and in the top Vorsprung trimmed version of the SQ5, you get an extra element of that, courtesy of Audi's Sport Differential, which transfers torque between the rear wheels for extra cornering traction. Every SQ5 gets a heavier duty Quattro four-wheel drive system, Audi's traditional Torsen activated setup, plus a 30mm lowered ride height. There's also adaptive damping, which on a Vorsprung model is replaced by an adaptive air suspension package. Now that also comes fitted to Vorsprung trimmed Q5s with lesser engines, but it can't be optioned in as an extra with more affordable trim levels, which is a pity because it'd be a really nice feature to have on this car. Adaptive air suspension uses gas-filled cushions instead of steel coils, and it works through a revised selection of drive select modes that see the off-road option becoming lift off-road and an extra all-road mode added. This air-suspended setup increases brake towing capacity, and it will lower the body by 15mm when you select dynamic or travel at speeds over 74 miles an hour. And it's even more useful on slippery or snowy tracks. It raises the body by 25mm in all-road mode and by as much as 45mm if you select the lift off-road setting. In the unlikely event that you were going to regularly use your Q5 for off-piste use, we think you'd really need that air suspension package, because without it, this car's capability is as limited as it would be with most other models in this segment. For the record, on standard models, there's a ride height of 208mm, an approach angle of 25 degrees, a departure angle of 27 degrees, and a ramp breakover angle of 17 degrees. In a Q5 that's been fitted with either adaptive or air suspension, you'll be able to monitor those gradient levels via a tilt angle indicator on the central dash screen, which is something that 99.9% of ordinary Q5 owners will never want to do. For them, of course, what will be important is this car's capability on the highway, not in the highlands. And it's at a cruise where the superb refinement that we mentioned earlier really comes into its own. At speed, noise suppression is so good that it's virtually impossible to know whether a petrol or a diesel engine beats beneath the bonnet. If long dual carriageway distances punctuated by urban commutes are going to be a regular diet of Q5 ownership, then you'd ideally want the Vorsprung model, which you'd need to get the brand's autonomous driving tape that we referenced earlier on. Here, an adaptive cruise control with stop and go and traffic jam assist package can manage most highway driving duties for you with minimal driver input. Plus, when you do reach the urban sprawl, an incorporated traffic jam assist feature will also free you up in slow to medium speed queues, allowing the car to automatically brake, accelerate and steer for you at speeds of up to 37 miles an hour. Plus, a predictive efficiency assistant uses sensors and GPS data to prepare the car for corners, roundabouts and junctions before you reach them. It'd all be perfect for Surbiton, if not the Serengeti. And it's all very Audi, just as a Q5 should be. Unless you happen to be a brand enthusiast or an Audi salesperson, you might struggle to spot the updated visual cues that set this version of this Mark II Type 80A series Q5 model apart from the original version of this second generation design that we first saw in 2017. Well, you might struggle to tell the differences in this standard SUV form anyway. Freshly added to the range is an alternative sportback version with a more coupe-like silhouette and quite a lot more pavement presence. It's the standard variant though, which is our focus today, and it remains a lean, sophisticated looking crossover, an SUV with a sense of purpose. Particularly in this revised form, which gets a series of specific visual hallmarks intended to move it more closely into step with other more recently introduced SUVs in the Audi portfolio. To that end, this octagonal single-frame front grille has become shallower and it now appears a little wider than before. With this base sport spec model, it features these vertical silver struts. Pricier variants replace slack with a black honeycomb mesh. Either way, the grille is the starting point for crisp bonnet contours, which, as before, flow up into the windscreen and the A-pillars. The bonnet wraps around the outer edges of the wings, as do the low-profile wedge-shaped headlights, now revised as part of the update. This base sport spec gets an upgrade to full LED beams with this distinctive upper section of daytime running light signature. Plusher variants now all get Audi's intelligent matrix beam technology, and all models get these more aggressive corner air intakes, which have grown in height and are now structured by trapezoidal inserts. And in profile, well, the larger bumpers of this revised model have added an extra 19 millimetres to the 4.8 metre body length, but an owner of an earlier version of this Mark II model is probably more likely to notice the slightly more streamlined look delivered by this redesigned lower sill insert. As before, the lower window edge curves slightly upwards just before the rear C-pillar, which isn't quite enough to make the shape look coupe-like, and it doesn't need to be because, as we mentioned earlier, Audi now offers an alternative sportback version of this model with a structure redesigned from the B-pillar backwards and a rear roof height reduction of 7 millimetres. Both variants share this prominent upper crease line, which begins as a bonnet seam at the corners of the headlights before sweeping back towards the rear of below mirrors that are mounted on the door shoulders, as they would be on a sports car. Lower down, various surfaces create an interplay of light and shadow to give the flanks some shape, and they separate flared wheel arches housing rims that vary in size from 18 to 21 inches. We've got the 19-inch 5-arm rotor rims here. At the back, updates include this extra diffuser insert finished in either selenite silver, matte brushed aluminium or titanium black, depending on model. And you now also get this chrome strip which runs between the wedge-shaped light clusters. Now these will usually be of the normal LED kind like this, but as part of the changes made to this revised model, Audi is now offering customers of top-spec Vorsprung trimmed Q5s the high-tech OLED lighting we first saw on the larger Q8. Those dual-like lamps use organic light-emitting diodes in fittings split into 3 tiles of 6 segments each, which enables the creation of 3 different light signatures from which customers can choose. These illuminate as you approach or leave the car. And the neat touch proximity sensors also allow them to automatically illuminate if another road user is detected within a 2-metre radius of a stationary Q5. Aside from these changes, things are much as before. The tailgate wraps itself around the rear corners of the car, a typical Audi SUV styling cue. And these additional lamps built into the bumper assume full lighting functionality when the rear hatch is raised. A high-level roof spoiler adds a finishing sporty touch. As usual, of course, what is more important is what you can't see, the stiff and sophisticated MLB Evo platform, which continues to underpin all Volkswagen Group upper mid-size models, which this Q5 shares with its close cousin, the Porsche Macan. So the exterior changes are restrained. Will the cabin updates applied to this revised model be equally subtle? Let's take a look up front. Getting into the front seat is predictably easy thanks to the raised ride height you get in this kind of SUV, and this door clunks shut with vault-like quality, leaving you a cabin that remains a masterclass in interior quality and ergonomics. Now, despite recent advances made by direct rivals in many ways, this remains the defining interior of its class, with a cool, classy feel that's distinctive to this Ingolstadt brand. There's now a much larger 10.1-inch Revo central dash infotainment screen, but otherwise the dash is much as before. It features an almost unbroken line of air vents that stretch from one side of the fascia to the other, sitting above a 3D trim inlay panel that's offered in different finishes according to your choice of model and spec, and which can be embellished by classy ambient lighting. As ever with an Audi, small details add to the feeling of quality, like this gear lever which acts as a handrest, the touch switches for the 3-zone climate control, and the way that the temperature displays have been incorporated into the redesigned ventilation system's rotary dials. As before, the brand wants the interior experience of this Q5 to replicate that of an SUV from the next class up, as in many ways it does. Every control function works with Swiss watch-style precision. If you own the original version of this second generation Type 80A Series Q5 and you come seeking improvements here, it's this larger central screen that you'll notice first. It's a vast improvement on the previous rather small display, which before was 7 or 8 inches, depending on how much you paid. The introduction of this more sophisticated screen rather reflects the car's adoption of Audi's latest MIB3 media platform, or parts of it anyway. Because this improved Q5 isn't a completely all-new design, the dashboard couldn't be completely reconfigured to incorporate the kind of useful lower 8.6-inch screen which the MIB3 setup delivers in Audi's larger models. But as with those cars, this upper screen relies almost entirely on acoustic touch functionality and voice control. So there's no longer any place for the old rotary controller by the gear stick, which used to make it easier to access particular infotainment screen functions without taking your eyes away from the road. We can't help feeling that that's a bit of a backward step. Still, the menu structure's better, the graphics are a big improvement, and navigation is now standard across the range, as is the usual Audi smartphone interface, compatible with the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto handset mirroring systems. Now, you'd have to pay extra for that on a rival Mercedes model in this segment. Unlike the old MMI monitor, the most important radio, media, telephone and nav functions are dealt with by tile apps that you can move around with a kind of drag and drop functionality that you'll be used to from your smartphone, or by what Audi calls natural language voice control, which works better than it did before, but it's still nothing like as intuitive as the competing Hey BMW or Hey Mercedes systems. The next generation Q5 will get back on terms with those rivals by integrating a version of the superior setup in the latest Mark 8 Volkswagen Golf. It is a pity that we couldn't have had that here. We are also a touch irritated that Audi still hasn't properly addressed a failing of the previous MMI setup, which is that the radio takes about 10 seconds to initialize every time you turn on the engine. Still, Audi Connect media connectivity makes up for a lot, even if you do have to pay a subscription to get it after 3 months of use, which, to be fair, is a caveat that also applies to advanced media features in rival models. Amongst other things, the Connect package delivers online media streaming, a Google Points of Interest search function, a comprehensive Audi online traffic information system, plus there's news and weather feeds via a Wi-Fi hotspot supporting the super-fast LTE advanced mobile data network. The other screen you'll be interfacing with in this car is the one you view through this magnesium-framed 3-spoke wheel. Audi fitted this 12.3-inch configurable virtual cockpit display previously in this Q5, but on most models it was a pricey extra. Now it's standard across the lineup, and here as usual it works with 2 selectable layouts activated by this steering wheel view button. There's a classical view which prioritises a couple of prominent dials separated by an information screen, and an infotainment mode which shrinks that pair of gauges to allow more central space for various data readouts, a trip computer, media or phone settings, or a full width navigation map. The only slight issue we have with the virtual cockpit package is you can't use the navigational part of it if you're using outside sat-nav systems through your phone, such as Waze. Otherwise though, this setup still represents a class benchmark for digital instrument clusters of this kind. You're perfectly positioned to view all this by supportive chairs which get standard leather trim. They're anatomically shaped and they feature embellishments that you'd have to pay extra for on rivals, things like heating and lumbar support. And that certainly adds to the very upmarket ambiance served up here. As we've already suggested, wherever you look, touch or feel, there are treats. The buttons click nicely, the column stalks feel good, and the low-rent plastics that you would find further down in most premium rivals are noticeable by their absence. Frontward visibility is fine, but your over-the-shoulder view is slightly compromised, as is the case with a number of other cars in this segment. So it's very fortunate that all-round parking sensors and a reversing camera are standard fit. Onto storage space, something had to fill the centre console area ahead of the gear stick where the old MMI rotary controller used to reside. Rather unimaginatively, we've got this compartment which is too small for anything other than a few coins. Audi's forgotten to include an overhead compartment for your sunglasses, but you do get deep door bins, this narrow coin tray to the left of the gear stick, a shallow cubby at the base of the centre stack, and a reasonably sized glove box, although you do have to pay extra for the optional storage pack if you want to get that fitted with a lock, and that does seem a bit mean on such an expensive car. The storage pack also gives you this compartment by the driver's right knee and this sliding tray which sits at the top of this lidded central box between the seats. The tray covers either twin cup holders or a storage area featuring twin USBs and an aux-in port. Plus, it can wirelessly charge your phone if you paid extra for that option. As for all-round visibility, well, there are a few restrictions when you're looking rearwards, and that's thanks to the thickness of the C-pillars, but that is normal on a car of this kind, and it's compensated for by the standard fitment of all-round parking sensors. There are no issues with the front view, thanks to windscreen pillars that have been thoughtfully chamfered so they don't obscure your vision at T-junctions and at roundabouts. Now it's time to turn our attention to the rear, which predictably is slightly easier to access with this standard SUV model than it is with the alternative Q5 Sportback body style. Unfortunately, the UK doesn't get the long wheelbase version of this model that Audi does offer to customers in its Asian markets, but that won't matter too much provided you can get a version of this car fitted with the sliding rear bench seat plus back seat. This lets you slide the base back and forth by 12 centimetres to increase either legroom or luggage space, and also alter the backrest angle through 3 stages for greater long distance comfort. It's the sort of thing you get as standard on a much cheaper Volkswagen Tiguan, but on a Q5 with a conventional 40 TDI or 45 TFSI engine, you find you can't have it at all with base sport spec, and you'll be charged £350 extra for it with mid-range S-Line trim. You would think that battery placement might obstruct this feature on the plug-in TFSIe variants, but actually no, it's standard with those, and it's also included on all Vorsprung and SQ5 spec models. The detail we've just given here reflects the importance of this feature to the way that you'll be able to interact with this Audi. It's a significant selling point over this model's BMW X3 and Mercedes GLC segment arch rivals. With this bench in its normal position, the space on offer back here isn't too much different from what you get with a competitor like that. In terms of interior width, there isn't enough room to put 3 child seats side by side, but you would think from a glance that it ought to be possible to fairly easily accommodate 3 adults in the back here. In practice though, this isn't that straightforward. The way the seat is sculpted doesn't help, nor does the way the moulding for this rear ceiling light pinches crucial millimetres of headroom. But the main culprit is this extremely high central transmission tunnel. 2 adults should be pretty comfortable with plenty of room for elbows and legs, and there are no real issues with headroom either, even in the Sportback version with its noticeably sloped roofline. Practicalities include ice-fixed child seat fastenings on the 2 outer pews here, provision of digital ventilation controls and door pockets that are large enough for a reasonably sized bottle. Go for the storage pack that we mentioned earlier, and there are seat back mat pockets, plus this central armrest gets a pair of pop-up cup holders. Let's take a look at the boot, and that's accessed via a standard powered tailgate. The rising height of this can be tailored to suit your garage ceiling, plus you can operate it with a wave of your foot beneath the bumper if you've opted for the extra cost advanced key package. A 520 litre space is on offer with this SUV body style, 10 litres more than you'll get with the Sportback version. That's a bit less than you'll get with a BMW X3 that offers 550 litres, but it's more than is offered by a Mercedes GLC, which offers 500 litres. And it's sufficient for 3 large suitcases with small bags squeezed in around them. The 1300mm luggage bay width means there's plenty of room for golf clubs too. Bear in mind that you'll get less space in a TFSIe plug-in model, 455 litres, because of the underfloor battery placement. On all Q5s, if you're carrying heavier items, you'll be glad of the relatively low loading sill, and if you've stretched to the top Vorsprung trim level with its adaptive air suspension, there'll be a button in this trunk compartment here which will allow you to drop the height of the loading sill by a further 55mm. Across the range, a partition net is available to separate the cargo bay from the rear seat area, and if you've gone for that storage pack we mentioned, then you'll get this left-hand netted storage area, tensioning straps in both cargo sidewalls, and the detachable net that you can stretch across the floor to stop small items from moving around. There isn't really any space to store anything under the boot floor, especially not here with the subwoofer for the audio system, and there's no spare wheel provided as standard, and that does seem odd given that you get one in a comparably priced Audi A4 Allroad. We always disapprove of that omission in an SUV. If you've got a Q5 fitted with the rear bench seat plus package we mentioned earlier, you'll have the advantage of being able to push the sliding rear bench right forward if necessary, so increasing cargo capacity to as much as 610 litres, and that could make all the difference on your next airport run. If you need more cargo flexibility, then the first option is to make use of the way that this rear bench splits 40-20-40, which means longer items like skis can be pushed through into the cabin without disturbing 2 rear-seated passengers. Completely flattening the rear bench, that frees up to 1,480 litres of space in the Sportback version of this car, or 1,520 litres in this standard SUV model. Again, that's a bit less than you get with obvious rivals. Actually, it's 190 litres less than you'll get in a rival Jaguar F-Pace, but we do expect it to be quite sufficient for the likely needs of most Q5 owners. For the Q5 TFSIe, one of those, the seats folded total is 1,395 litres. If you're looking to buy an upper mid-sized premium SUV like this Q5 and you're expecting to pay under £40,000 for it, you're being a touch unrealistic. From launch, prices for the improved version of this second generation model actually started at just over £42,000, and that's for the car that we've chosen to test here, the base sport trimmed version of the 40 TDI diesel derivative. This has a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine, as almost all Q5s sold in our market do, paired in every case with a 7-speed S-tronic dual-clutch auto gearbox. The other mainstream alternative is the 45 TFSI petrol model, which rings 265 PS from its 1984cc power plant. An extra £1,000 premium on the asking price justifies the 61 PS more that you get from that green pump-fueled engine. Q5 folk looking at 40 TDI or 45 TFSI variants often choose to find the £2,800 premium to upgrade from this sport spec to mid-range S-line trim. There is a huge £15,000 price hike on top of that if you want the top Vorsprung spec, by which time you'll be paying just over £60,000. The other engine option you might want to consider here is Audi's TFSIe plug-in hybrid power plant. That's a version of the 2-litre TFSI petrol unit mated to a 105 kilowatt electric motor powered by a 14.1 kilowatt hour battery, which can deliver an electrified range of up to 26 miles. This comes in two forms, with the variant most will want being the 50 TFSIe model, which offers 299 PS. It can be had with the major trim levels, and it prices from around £50,000. If you can afford to stretch over the £55,000 mark, then there's also a faster 55 TFSIe derivative, which puts out 367 PS and comes only in the highest standard of trim. At the top of the Q5 range, Audi still offers its fast SQ5 model, which has returned to exclusive use of TDI diesel power after briefly dabbling with a TFSI petrol engine towards the end of the production run of the pre-facelifted version of this second generation design. The V6 TDI used here puts out 341 PS, and prices from launch started at around £55,000 or around £70,000 with top Vorsprung spec. Right, let's take a look at the overall Q5 value proposition. In terms of pricing perspective, before we get into rival brand comparisons, we probably first need to clarify this Q5's position in the Audi lineup. So a Q5 costs around £7,000 more than a comparable version of the next model down in the brand's Q lineup. That's the Q3. It's probably more relevant, though, to note that there is very little difference in price between the car we have here and the brand's A4 all-road Avant Estate model, which essentially shares all the same technology, but which presents it in a less SUV-orientated package. An A4 all-road, that will save you around £2,500 over an equivalently engined Q5. With that said, you'll want to know how the Q5's pricing stacks up against premium branded upper mid-sized SUVs from rival manufacturers. So let's see. We're going to use this 2-litre TDI 204 PS diesel model as a comparison benchmark because, as we suggested, that is the variant that most Q5 buyers will be looking at. At the time of this test in early 2021, this Q5 variant's asking price was virtually the same as that required by a rival BMW X3 xDrive 20D, and about £2,000 less than the sum required for a competing Mercedes GLC 220D. You'd probably save around £2,500 to £3,000 if you opted instead for equivalent versions of the three other main contenders in the segment: the Jaguar F-Pace, the Volvo XC60 and the Alfa Romeo Stelvio. Other upper mid-sized SUVs in this segment are less likely to take your interest. You could save £6,000 to £7,000 by choosing a Lexus NX, but that's only offered in self-charging hybrid form, and it's a slightly smaller car. And a Q5 budget could also get you nicer versions of premium badged 7-seat upper mid-sized SUVs like the Land Rover Discovery Sport or the Mercedes GLB. Our focus here, though, is on mainstream Q5 motoring, and if you've done your homework and you've looked at a few alternatives, you conclude that it is this Audi that you really want, then you're going to need to know just how generous the Ingolstadt brand has been when it comes to the all-important standard specification. So let's see. Even entry-level sports spec gives you plenty. To be specific, you get 18-inch 5 twin-spoke alloy wheels, full LED headlights, aluminium roof rails, keyless entry, an alarm, auto headlamps and wipers, a powered tailgate, and Audi Parking System Plus, which gives you front and rear parking sensors. Inside, there's leather upholstery, there's climate control, heated front seats, an auto-dimming rear-view mirror, cruise control and LED interior lighting pack, a reversing camera and a useful removable net partition for the cargo area. Plus, there's a drive select system. Now, this allows you to tweak the throttle, the steering and the gear shift timings to suit the way that you want to drive. Perhaps the most important piece of standard interior equipment fitted across the Q5 range, though, is this car's high-end infotainment package. Audi calls it MMI Navigation Plus with MMI Touch. To operate it all, the improved version of this second-generation Q5 borrows from the new generation MIB3 infotainment platform that we first saw in the fourth-generation A8 saloon, or borrows from part of it anyway, specifically the high-mounted centre dash 10.1-inch screen with its more sophisticated graphics, acoustic feedback and natural language Hey Audi voice control. This setup's intelligent 3D navigation system is able to take into account traffic congestion and previously driven routes, brief you on filling stations and parking places on your route, and include 3D graphic models of many European cities. The MMI package also includes voice recognition, which is able to connect with the cloud-based Amazon voice service Alexa. And there's an 8-speaker DAB sound system and the usual wireless smartphone interface, which hooks you up with the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto phone mirroring connectivity systems. As part of the MMI system, you'll get 3 months free use of the Audi Connect Media Connectivity Package. You'll pay a subscription for those services if you want to continue with them after that point, and you might well want to. Audi Connect works via an embedded SIM, which is permanently installed in the car, and it operates on a data flat rate, so you won't be stung with high roaming charges if you do a bit of intercontinental motoring. The setup comes with an LTE data transmission module, which establishes high-speed 4G Internet 3 access and creates in your Q5 a Wi-Fi hotspot, which supports the superfast LTE Advanced Mobile Data Network. It also allows you to navigate with images from Google Earth, access a Google Points of Interest search function with voice control, and to use a web radio setup with stations from all around the world. Through the Connect system, you can access special in-car versions of your Facebook and Twitter pages, and it's also possible to read, write and send text messages and emails. The included online media streaming package that gives you access to millions of music tracks, and there's also a clever Audi online traffic information system which uses live traffic information to reroute you around jams. What else? Well, you can take Audi Connect connectivity with you even when you're not with your Q5 thanks to the improved My Audi app. This transmits points of interest to the navigation system, streams music, and it can transfer your calendar to the MMI infotainment screen. The app also allows you to seamlessly plan a route across multiple devices. So if you're going to a restaurant in an unfamiliar city, for example, and you have to park a few streets away from the venue, navigation will continue with you on your smartphone as you complete the journey on foot. Finally, as usual with vehicle apps, you can use it to get a vehicle status report and to lock or unlock the doors from wherever you are. All of this comes as standard with base sport trim, but most Q5 customers opt to find the extra to move to mid-range S-Line trim. That's primarily because it delivers a significantly more purposeful look. That comes courtesy of larger 19-inch 5 twin-spoke star alloy wheels, intelligent matrix LED headlights with washers, rear privacy glass, and a sport styling pack which includes S-Line themed bumpers and side skirts, a bespoke rear diffuser and a body-coloured front spoiler lip, plus a honeycomb structure front grille. At this level, conventionally engined Q5s get a more overt S-Line rear roof spoiler too. S-Line trim also gets you dynamic scrolling front and rear indicators and lowered sport suspension. The cabin of an S-Line Spec Q5, meanwhile, is lifted by smarter leather and Alcantara upholstery, a black cloth headliner, stainless steel pedals, illuminated door sill plates, a gear knob in black perforated leather, contrast stitching around the cabin, and an S-Line branded 3-spoke sports steering wheel with paddle shifters. If you want more and you don't mind paying for it, then top-spec Vorsprung trim beckons. Perhaps the two key additional features here are adaptive air suspension and the full portfolio of Audi's array of camera safety kit. We're going to cover that off in a few moments. But there's also a whole stack of aesthetic embellishment and luxury stuff too. The looks of a Vorsprung Spec Q5 are enhanced by bigger 21-inch 5 V-spoke Audi Sport wheels, the distinctive illuminating signature of the brand's clever OLED rear lights, and a black styling pack which applies that colour to the door mirrors and to the roof rails. Conventionally engined models, they get side running boards too. Inside you get an upgrade to softer, fine Napa leather upholstery with diamond stitching. There's power for the front chairs and for the steering column too. You get the rear bench seat plus sliding rear bench, and you're also treated to a 19-speaker Bang & Olufsen 3D sound system putting out 755 watts. Other Vorsprung spec features include an extended interior upholstery pack with leatherette covering for the lower centre console, highlighted, like the doors, by a multicoloured ambient lighting system. There's also a heated steering wheel, piano black inlays, Vorsprung puddle lights, a front seat massaging function, heated rear seats, a panoramic sunroof, the Audi phone box wireless phone charger, and the advanced key system that allows you to open the powered tailgate with a wave of your foot below the bumper. Drive features include a head-up display, a 360-degree camera system, and park assist to steer you into spaces, and adaptive cruise control too. What about if you're looking at the flagship sporting SQ5 variant? Well, that model gets all the features you'd receive with S-Line spec, plus S-Sport adaptive suspension with damper control, which in this case allows Audi to add an extra off-road setting to the Drive Select driving mode system. As you'd want in choosing this more dynamic derivative, there is a subtly specific look with S-model aluminium trimmed door mirrors and aluminium trimmed dual branch tailpipe design and a dynamic S-specific body kit. Inside, SQ5 buyers are treated to a bespoke S-branded cabin featuring extra leatherette interior trim, a special gear lever, an S-branded 3-spoke steering wheel, S-specific instrument dials, and the brand's famous diamond-stitched Napa leather-trimmed S-Sport seats. Plus, in its standard form, the SQ5 gets the rear bench plus sliding rear bench, Audi beam puddle lights, massaging front seats, the extended interior upholstery pack, and the Audi phone box wireless phone charging mat. If you want more, then your SQ5 can also be ordered in top Vorsprung form with all the extra Vorsprung spec features that we just taught you through. On to the options that you can get across the Q5 range. We're disappointed to find that it's no longer possible to order the rear bench plus sliding rear seat on mainstream sport spec 40 TDI and 45 TFSI model Q5s, but you can have it as a £350 option on the 40 TDI and 45 TFSI S-Line spec models. That sliding rear seat is standard on the plug-in TFSIe variants and also features on the SQ5s and all variants with Vorsprung trim. Across the range with the Sport and S-Line derivatives, you can't add in adaptive air suspension or adaptive damping, but with those two mainstream trim levels, you can, though, add in quite a lot of other niceties which you'd otherwise have to stretch up to that pricey Vorsprung spec level 4. Now, a number of these are included in the optional comfort and sound pack. Now, your Audi Centre salesperson is going to want you to consider finding an extra £1,400 for that. This gives you the 19-speaker, 755-watt Bang & Olufsen 3D sound system, the extended LED interior multicoloured lighting pack, the 360-degree camera system, and the advanced key package with its gesture-controlled rear tailgate. Other Vorsprung style features that you might want to add into a Sport or S-Line spec model include a panoramic roof, the Audi phone box wireless charging mat, and a pack that gives you various interior elements in artificial leather. There's also an optional parking assistance pack, which includes a 360-degree reversing camera and Audi's Park Assist Plus package to steer you into spaces. You can choose from a range of bespoke puddle lights too. Bear in mind that unless you want your Q5 painted in either of the two solid colours that Audi offers, Brilliant Black and Ibis White, you're going to have to be paying the brand £675 more for one of the available metallic shades. We've got metallic Glacier White here. There's a 19-inch wheel upgrade option too, and on an SQ5 you can add carbon mirror trims as well. What about a few extra practical touches? Well, you're going to need the optional Space Saver spare wheel unless you want to be stuck by the road fiddling with a tyre repair kit the next time you have a puncture. And we would also want to tick the box for the pack that gives you a larger 70-litre fuel tank and on a TDI model a bigger 24-litre AdBlue tank. Another important box to tick is that for the storage pack, which gives you netting for the front seat backs, a storage compartment on the driver's side, also a lockable glove box, a cup holder in the rear centre armrest, plus for the boot, tensioning straps, recessed netted areas and a luggage net. Talking of the boot, there's lots that you could add in there. For the luggage compartment, you can specify a protective shell, a foldable box or a durable tray. Plus, if you have pets, you might want to add in a longitudinal or transversely mounted partition net. You can add a tow bar, of course, and that will also allow you to add bike carriers capable of taking either 2 or 3 bikes. Bicycles can also be carried using a bespoke rack on the roof. And roof racks are also available for roof boxes, skis, snowboards and kayaks. Other practical options available include child seats, all-weather floor mats, mud flaps, an air freshener gecko, a dash cam drive recorder and even an espresso maker. Enough with optional features, let's move on now to look at safety. Now there's no driver's knee bag, but otherwise most of the main features that you'd expect are present and correct, with a standard fit highlight on all models being a collision avoidance system that Audi calls Pre-Sense City. Now this is one of those setups which constantly scans the road ahead in search of potential vehicle and pedestrian accident hazards, in this case at a speed range of up to 52 miles an hour. If it detects one, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or you aren't able to, then the system will automatically brake the car and it should be able to avoid a collision entirely at speeds of under 24 miles an hour. If you are going faster than that, the Pre-Sense City system will dramatically reduce your speed to significantly soften the impending impact. If you do hit something and you panic, a standard multi-collision brake assist system will automatically take over the braking duties to avoid the possibility of skidding and further collisions. Specify a tow bar and you'll also benefit from a trailer assist system which will restrict towing sway. This car is fundamentally safe too, with key parts of the body structure fashioned from crash-safe, hot-formed, high-strength steel. As you expect, all variants feature twin front, side and curtain airbags. These ones are able to automatically adjust their deployment to suit both the passenger seating positions and the type of front collision. Other basic standard safety features include ISOFIX child seat fastenings, anti-whiplash head restraints, a tyre pressure loss indicator, a pop-up bonnet which minimises pedestrian injuries in an impact, and a complete roster of electronic acronyms, including the usual electronic assistance for braking, for traction and stability control. There is also a rest recommendation feature, which at speeds of over 18 miles an hour monitors your driving for drowsiness and alerts you, if necessary, to stop for a restorative coffee. And an Audi Connect safety and service feature, which will automatically alert the emergency services with your exact GPS location if you are in an accident which has activated the airbags. It's always possible to go further though, and should you want extra peace of mind on a Sport and S-Line spec model, then your Audi Centre salesperson will point you towards the optional City Assist pack, which for £500 more gives you 4 extra camera safety features. There's Audi Side Assist, that's basically a blind spot assistance system which warns you if you're just about to dangerously pull out when there's a vehicle in your blind spot. Secondly, there's Cross Traffic Assist Rear. That's a feature which warns you of oncoming traffic when you're reversing out of a parking space. Thirdly, there's Audi Presense Basic, which braces the car for a collision, tightening the seatbelts, closing all the windows, including the sunroof, and activating the hazard lights. When a collision is unavoidable, the Presense Basic system assists the driver with controlled brake applications, often overriding the intense effort of the driver and keeping the car from skidding. Now, the final element in the City Assist pack is Audi Presense Rear. That's a system which also braces the car for collision, but this time with specific attention on impending collisions from the back, detected via sensors in the rear bumper. That's covered the safety options on offer. As mentioned earlier, though, the top Vorsprung level of trim comes with a much wider array of camera safety and driving tech as standard, much of which can't be had elsewhere in the range. At this level in the lineup, your Q5 will come embellished with a level 2 style autonomous driving feature, adaptive cruise control with stop and go and traffic jam assist, and the clever efficiency tool which works with it, a predictive efficiency assistant. Plus there are 4 camera-driven safety elements, in addition, of course, to all the features of the City Assist pack that we just briefed you on, which, of course, is standard at Vorsprung level. Let's start with the autonomous drive stuff and begin with adaptive cruise control with stop and go and traffic jam assist. Now, this system uses automatic distance regulation to seamlessly keep your Q5 a set distance behind the car in front on the highway, and it'll warn you if you're too close to another vehicle, and it's able to automatically stop you and then start you off again if you come across a tailback. The traffic jam assist bit also frees you up in slow to medium speed queues, allowing the car to automatically brake, accelerate and steer for you at speeds of up to 37 miles an hour. The predictive efficiency assistance system works with that setup, and it regulates your Audi's speed for maximum efficiency and also offers driving tips that could create fuel savings of up to 10%. On to the Vorsprung model's extra safety features. There's exit warning, which will alert occupants if they're about to open the door in the face of oncoming traffic. There's also turn assist, which automatically applies the brakes to prevent an accident if you're turning out of a junction and you haven't seen an oncoming car or bike. If only every car had that feature. Other more familiar inclusions for the Vorsprung spec models run to traffic sign recognition, which can picture road signs and display them for you on the dash, and active lane assist, which is there to gently steer you back into your lane if you've inadvertently drifted out of it. It's all very reassuring. Audi couldn't afford to wait until a complete Q5 redesign to introduce extensive engine electrification here, which is why we've got it with this facelift update package. As you'll already know if you viewed our driving experience section, both the conventional 2-litre diesel and petrol engines get the brand's 12-volt mild hybrid system, plus there is a 48-volt version of that setup for the V6 TDI unit that features in the SQ5. And there are 2 PHEV plug-in hybrid TFSIe models. All this talk about electrification and hybrids might lead you to expect greater efficiency gains than have actually been delivered. Let's give you a few WLTP stats which will base around this standard SUV body shape. The stats for the Sportback body shape are fractionally behind because that weighs 15 kilos more. Right, let's get to it. With base sport trim, this 4T TDI diesel variant manages up to 44.8 mpg on the combined cycle and up to 165 grams per kilometre of CO2. That's almost identical to the figures you'll get from a rival Mercedes GLC 220D, and not much different from the stats of a comparable Jaguar F-Pace D165 or Volvo XC60 B4. But the class leader remains BMW's X3 xDrive 20D, which manages 47.9 mpg and 154 grams per kilometre. It is worth noting, by the way, that with the larger 21-inch wheels of the top Vorsprung trim, the figures of a Q5 40 TDI fall to 41.5 mpg and 179 grams per kilometre. These diesel figures have been aided by the introduction of so-called twin-dosing catalytic converter technology for the latest version of this model's 2-litre TDI power plant, which features dual AdBlue injection and significantly increases emissions cleanliness. With twin dosing, AdBlue is injected upstream of 2 SCR catalytic converters arranged in series, with the result of cutting emissions of nitrogen oxide by up to 80% compared with the previous 2-litre TDI unit. For the alternative mainstream derivative, the 45 TFSI petrol model, the figures with sport spec are 33.8 mpg and 191 grams per kilometre of CO2, or 31 mpg and 200 grams per kilometre with Vorsprung trim. Across the board with Q5 40 TDI or 45 TFSI models, it's difficult to see just how much of a difference the MHEV system has made to respective figures because the industry has switched to a new measurement cycle since the Mark II version of this car was originally launched back in 2017. Audi's claim for the difference its 12-volt MHEV or mild hybrid system makes with these 40 TDI and 45 TFSI Q5 models is actually quite modest, a saving of 0.3 litres of fuel every 100 kilometres or 62 miles. Worthwhile certainly, but you can keep the Prius comparisons on hold. A bigger efficiency change actually took place when this Mark II Q5 first saw the light of day in unelectrified form back in 2017. Thanks to a stiffer, lighter, new generation MLB Evo chassis, this Type 80A series model managed to weigh in up to 90 kilos lighter than its direct predecessor, a reduction equivalent to the weight saving that you make if you asked a portly adult passenger to get out and walk. Mind you, all that really did was to return this Audi to somewhere near the class standard. Even now it's still 35 kilos heavier than an equivalent BMW X3. And as our comparisons with obvious rivals suggested earlier, you could say the same about the MHEV engine tweaks. Just in case you haven't seen our driving experience section, we'll brief you on what Audi's definition of mild hybrid tech actually means. A BAS, belt alternator starter generator, which with the 4-cylinder engines powers a 12-volt main electrical setup in which a compact lithium-ion battery in the boot stores energy harvested via a KERS or kinetic energy recovery system. During braking, the BAS package can recover up to 5 kilowatts of power and feed it back into the battery. If the driver takes their foot off the accelerator at speeds between 34 and 99 miles an hour, the mild hybrid system will recuperate energy while the car rolls in idle or coasts with its engine automatically switched off. The belt alternator starter generator restarts the engine the next time that the accelerator is depressed, and does so faster and more gently than a conventional starter. All of this you'll particularly notice at urban speeds when the engine start-stop system is cutting in and out. The start-stop range begins at just under 14 miles an hour, so you'll often find the car coasting up to the end of a traffic queue, a traffic light or a level crossing. All of this mild hybrid technology sounds good, but as we remarked earlier, and as Audi admits, it doesn't achieve a huge improvement in overall fuel and CO2 stats. If you want a Q5 variant that does that, your Audi Centre will point you in the direction of the TFSIe plug-in hybrid models we mentioned at the beginning. There are two, the 50 TFSIe with 299 PS and the 55 TFSIe with 367 PS. Both pair the 2-litre TFSI petrol engine of the conventional 45 TFSI with a 105 kilowatt electric motor powered by a 14.1 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery. This can be charged in about 2 hours from a 7 kilowatt garage wall box or in about 6 hours from a conventional 3-pin domestic plug. With the battery of a Q5 TFSIe model fully replenished, up to 26 miles of all-electric driving range is supposed to be possible, although you'll only maximise that if you make proactive use of the various available drive modes. Hybrid is the default one, but you've also got EV for battery power only, and battery hold, which enables you to save battery power for later on in your trip. With regard to fuel and CO2 emissions, the best figures that we had at the time of this film in early 2021 were up to 128 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and up to 46 grams per kilometre of CO2 for the 50 TFSIe model, and up to 113 mpg and 49 grams per kilometre for the 55 TFSIe. These are pie-in-the-sky figures, of course. You'd probably only get around 40 mpg from a Q5 TFSIe in real-world motoring, but the important thing is that the government believes them, hence the impressively low benefit-in-kind taxation figures for these TFSIe plug-in hybrid models. You're talking 14% in year 1 of ownership, 15% in year 2 and 16% in year 3. To give you some perspective on that, the conventional 40 TDI and 45 TFSI Q5 variants are typically rated at 37%. Tax levels this low explain why the pence per mile figure for a Q5 TFSIe, 9.8 pence per mile, looks so affordable. For completion on our perusal of Q5 fuel and CO2 readings, we'll also give you the efficiency stats for the sporting SQ5 TDI variant. This 6-cylinder diesel model gets the 48-volt version of the PHEV mild hybrid system, which has a more sophisticated belt alternator starter generator package, which can recover up to 8 kilowatts of power and feed it back into the battery. As a result, an SQ5 manages a WLTP-rated combined cycle fuel return of 34.4 mpg and a CO2 reading of 216 grams per kilometre. That translates into a BIK tax rating of 37%. All of which is pretty impressive for a sports SUV capable of getting to 62 miles an hour in 5.1 seconds. Helping the Q5 stay competitive in efficiency terms are a whole series of careful design features. For example, a slippery CD factor of 0.30 makes this one of the more aerodynamic SUVs in the segment. This is something aided on this 40 TDI variant by a controllable cool air inlet, a frame installed behind the radiator grille housing 2 blinds which close at low speeds and open at higher ones to improve air resistance. The auto gearbox also includes a coasting function which cuts in to disengage the engine at cruising speeds of between 34 and 99 miles an hour and then re-engages it immediately and almost seamlessly when you either accelerate or brake. Whatever your Q5 variant of choice, magazine tests have pointed out that across the board the efficiency figures that we've quoted can be difficult to achieve in day-to-day motoring, but then that isn't an issue exclusive to Audi. Much will depend on the driver, hence the Ingolstadt brand's efforts with this car to help the person at the wheel to do more when it comes to frugality. An efficiency assist segment of the centre dash infotainment screen allows you to activate or deactivate some of the car's main frugality aids, things like the intelligent coasting feature that we just mentioned. You can also activate general economy tips and what Audi calls predictive messaging. In addition, there's an energy consumers readout in the instrument cluster, and that shows you the effect that, say, the air conditioning is having on the car's energy usage. Beyond that, as usual with the company's models, there's an efficiency setting on the Drive Select vehicle dynamic system, which tweaks the air conditioning, the gear shift timings, and the throttle response for maximum frugality. If you choose to use the individual Drive Select mode, which will allow you to tailor your preferred settings, then you'll find that efficient is one of the 3 options that you can choose for each criteria setting. The MMI navigation system on this car has been programmed around what Audi calls predictive and efficient driving, and that means that it will adapt the drive demeanour of your Q5 based on things like speed limits and gradient changes. And if you've stretched right up to the top Vorsprung versions of this car, you'll find it can be even more proactively efficient, and that's thanks to the predictive efficiency assistant setup that comes as part of the PAC's adaptive cruise assist. Predictive efficiency assistant really is very clever. It's constantly gathering navigation data, camera images and feedback from the built-in Car2X message system, which receives car swarm feedback from other similarly equipped vehicles. Using all this, the software can then contribute to a more economical driving style, for example, instructing you when to release the accelerator before entering a curve or behind a slower vehicle. Get out onto the highway, and with the adaptive cruise control system activated, Efficiency Assist will automatically make all the frugal driving adjustments for you. What else? Well, bear in mind that as with all modern diesel cars, the TDI versions of this one use an AdBlue fuel additive stored in a separate rear tank, and that'll need to be topped up as part of regular servicing. It's a 12-litre tank as standard, but you can pay a little more at point of purchase to get a 24-litre version, and that'll last you rather longer. This comes packaged up with a slightly larger 70-litre fuel tank. It's 5 litres bigger than you get on a standard 40 TDI. As for maintenance, well, servicing your Q5 should be no more taxing than is the case with one of the company's smaller cars. As usual with Audi models, there's a choice of either a fixed or a flexible servicing regime. The choice between the two will depend on the extent of your likely annual mileage. The fixed service is aimed at drivers who cover fewer than 10,000 miles a year, and it includes an oil change service every 9,000 miles or every year, plus an inspection service every 19,000 miles or every 2 years. If you cover more than 10,000 miles a year, then the flexible service schedule will be more appropriate. This regime includes oil change and inspection services at variable intervals of up to every 19,000 miles or every 2 years. Whatever package you go for, you'll need to change the brake fluid after the first 3 years and then every 2 years thereafter. Overall maintenance costs can be kept down if you go for one of the prepaid servicing plans, which you'll be offered at initial purchase. Now, they can cover you for a maximum of 3 years, and they include an oil service and a major service. You may also be interested to know that this car can even book its own service appointments via an Audi Connect safety and service system app. As well as providing emergency calling and online roadside assistance, this feature can, at the appropriate time, send a service request direct to your local dealer. Alternatively, you can sign up for Audi Service Request, and that uses the onboard Wi-Fi to enable your car to communicate with the dealer instead. As the Q5 nears a time when work will be needed, the diagnostics will alert the nominated local Audi centre, and they will then contact you to book in a convenient time. Another neat service that your dealer can offer you is the so-called Audi Cam system. Now here, technicians who are carrying out workshop inspections on your Q5 can focus a handheld Audi Cam camera on specific problems and accompany the image with a verbal diagnosis to create footage that can then be sent onto your computer or to your smartphone. That way you'll know precisely what work you're authorising on your car. Onto residuals, the Q5 has always performed well in this regard and nothing's changed here. Independent experts Cap Monitor reckon that over the usual 3-year, 60,000 mile period, a 40 TDI diesel Q5 like this one will cling on to around 50% of its original asking price. In comparison, comparable Mercedes GLC 220D manages just 46%. Go for the alternative 45 TFSI petrol model and you'll find that it's 48 retained value figure. That's also class leading. It just shades that of a comparable Jaguar F-Pace P250. It's a similar story when it comes to pence per mile running costs. Cap reckoned that after 3 years and 60,000 miles, a Q5 40 TDI would cost 42.76 pence per mile to run, around 2 pence per mile less than an equivalent diesel Jaguar F-Pace and more than 3 pence per mile less than a comparable Mercedes GLC 220D. Those kinds of figures really can add up if you're covering higher mileages. The TFSIe models hang on to their value well too, typically retaining 46 to 47% of their value over the 3-year 60,000 mile period. In comparison, a rival Volvo XC60 Recharge plug-in model only managed 42%. And we'll finish off by covering the warranty. All cars in this class get 3 years of cover, but whereas BMW and Mercedes don't limit your mileage in that period, Audi rather meanly restricts you to 60,000 miles. Optional extra cost packages can extend the cover to either 4 or 5 years and 75,000 or 95,000 miles respectively. As for insurance groupings, well, for the 40 TDI variant, ratings start at Group 33E for Sport Trim, 35E for S-Line spec and 40E for the Vorsprung version. For the 2 TFSIe plug-in models, insurance groupings range between 41E and 43E depending on variant. Q5 has always been a top seller on merit. Nothing's changed. It's simply very good at almost everything. If you want the ultimate driver's car or the ultimate off-roader in this sector, well, no, this isn't it. But is this the best all-rounder in the class? Well, many would say so. There are many reasons why. Ingolstadt has concentrated on perfecting refinement and ride quality, with the result that both remain difficult to better in the sector. Plus, there's cabin quality, which continues to set the segment standard. Along with sharp looks, meticulous build quality, and a very competitive showing when it comes to efficiency, residual values, and safety technology. Rivals, of course, offer many of these things too, but nobody packages them up quite like Audi. This Q5 isn't perfect, of course. We've already alluded to the fact that it could be more interesting to drive. Audi needs to borrow expertise used in this model's close cousin, the Porsche Macan, in that regard. But there's no shortage of showroom appeal here. No other brand does a better digital instrument screen, and although we were disappointed with some elements of the infotainment package upgrade, it certainly brings media connectivity within striking distance of the newer rival BMW and Mercedes systems, although without quite matching them. That stiffening competition has forced Audi to up its game in terms of standard equipment lower down the range, which is welcome. Plus, the styling changes have given this car a little more pavement personality. In summary then, whether your destination is Sainsbury's or the annual family skiing trip to Chamonix, it's likely that you'll feel better about doing it in an Audi Q5. Although some rivals might drive better or make more of a golf club statement, it's ultimately hard to escape the conclusion that a Q5 simply does a better job of the whole business of ticking every really important need that you want to meet when buying a premium upper mid-sized SUV. It isn't a car for extremes, but if you're looking for a contender in this segment, it's extremely difficult to ignore. Resolutely high-tech and resolutely real-world, the Q5 remains resolutely right.